If you're struggling to aim in XDefiant and constantly losing your gunfights, then this is the video for you. In this video, I'll be giving you the best tips and settings to improve your aim. If you found this video helpful, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more XDefiant content. Starting off with tip number 1, and that's just going to be to understand aim assist. How does aim assist work and what is rotational aim assist? So rotational aim assist basically means that your aim assist is pulled when you're using the left stick. No matter whether you're standing in the open or behind head glitch, you must always be using the left stick when aiming. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you an example of this. So when you're seeing me here, I'm aiming at an opponent and you can see that I'm moving left to right and is being pulled onto him. We'll start with a bit of a closer one. So I'm just going to sit here and move left. You can see ever so slightly, especially the slower you do it, that your aim assist is ever so slightly being pulled onto this person. So I'm going to give you an example of it right here. So you can see my two thumbsticks are right here. So what I'm doing is I'll stand here and I'll walk across. You can see it's being pulled. You can see again it's being pulled and I'm not moving. You can see here, this is my aim. So I'll even show it like this. So say I'm aiming in between these two characters and I'm just going to slowly move across. You can see by it's locking, it's rotating back and forth and I'm not touching the other one. You can see it's pulling onto it. So as I'm going across, the aim assist is being pulled onto the mannequin. So from here, it is obviously less. You're moving very quickly side to side. It's pulling it on. As you go closer though, look at this. It pulls ever so slightly across. And same with this one. So the closer targets, it does the most. So if I step back here, you can actually see the aim assist is pulling it onto him. Once again, we're going to show it on the camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk just to the side and we're just going to walk across. See how much my aim is tilting back and forth? It's rotational aim assist. So what that basically means is when you're moving your left stick, the aim is being pulled on to the target. So if you're sitting there and you're like, oh, my aim assist doesn't feel like it's working too well, that's the reason why, is you're sitting still. So this is something you're gonna have to get used to doing. So when you're in gunfights, you slide in, you're doing whatever, and you just have to keep moving like this. Or you'll see people like to jump around and stuff. Because any bit of movement, as long as you're strafing, moving your left stick whatsoever, will keep it close to the enemy. So if you're strafing over here and you're just moving left to right, strafing, it's going to pull it in. So make sure, if you're in a gunfight here and you run into someone, don't stop and aim like this. Obviously, if they're a bad player or if they're not moving, we will. But if you slide in and you're jumping, you're moving up, left, right, you don't have to be moving too much. It just pulls whenever there's a bit of left movement. We are going to get into the different types of aim assist and I'll explain to you in a minute why this works. But just remember to constantly move your left analog stick at all times to make sure that the aim assist is actually working. So next is for step number 2, and that's going to be for your aim response curve type. A lot of players don't understand the difference between standard, linear, and reverse S-curve. So most players just leave it on default. But this is going to be a huge mistake. Of course, for some players, it does suit them to keep it on standard. But for the majority of players, they're either playing it on linear or on reverse S-curve. To help you decide which aim response curve type you should be using, I'm firstly going to explain the differences between linear and the reverse S-curve. Starting off with reverse S-curve, as in my opinion, it is by far the best option for playing it on. Starting off with reverse S-curve, as I think it is the best aim assist type in the whole of XDefiant, and it is the reason why I win so many of my close quarter engagements. So for the reverse S-curve, it's there to boost the small and large movements, meaning for players that have mastered the move mechanics, you will notice a much stronger aim assist when moving, jumping, and sliding during gunfights. You'll notice if you watch a lot of my gameplays, I'm always either strafing side to side, jumping, or sliding in and out of gunfights. You'll notice with this as well, no matter whether I'm jumping or strafing, it's always going to keep it centered on the opponent, because with all these small little movements, the aim assist is pulling it in straight away. And this is particularly good for players that enjoy using a lot of movement. So if you're into movement, don't even bother watching the linear part, just keep it on reverse S-curve. And now let's have a look at how linear works. So just like all the other aim assists in the video, you still need to keep your left stick on the enemy for it to work. But in my opinion, linear is for players that use a lot less movement in their game. When trying this out and testing the two for a period of time, I felt that when I was moving slower with linear, it had a stronger aim assist than when I was using reverse S-curve and moving slower. And this is just down to the aim rate speed is tied directly to your movement speed. So what that basically means is at slower paces, it feels like your aim assist is just that bit more sticky, especially up close. So if you're moving left to right, even the smallest bit, it feels like your aim assist is a lot better. Comparing this to reverse S-curve, it feels like all the little micro adjustments you make, you have to move more to get the most engagement out of it. When I was playing on linear, I found myself not being able to track enemies while jumping around, but I did find at the longer ranges it did feel a lot better, and that the aim assist was kicking in from a much further range. But once again, this is going to come down to personal preference. There's not a right or wrong answer for this. I do recommend trying them both out for yourself, as I know that some players just prefer the linear style over the reverse S-curve. Comment down below which you'll be using though. I'm curious to see what percentage of the player base are going to be running linear and what are going to be running reverse S-curve. And tip number 3 is to find the perfect sensitivity. This is where there's a bit of a crossroad in the community, as there is one setting that is single-handedly dividing the community, and that is the acceleration speed multiplier. This is what controls the luck boosting when not ADSing. I personally recommend using it on a 2 and having a lower sensitivity somewhere between the ranges of 60 and 50, obviously depending on how it feels to you. But a lot of players have opted to also run this at 0, instead increasing their sensitivity by 30 to 40, meaning for myself, if I was to run it on 0-0, I would need to increase my speed from 35 to about 65 or 70 to compensate for the slower stick input. But if you want to know what the vast majority of top players are using at the moment, and that is the acceleration speed multiplier at 2 with a much slower sensitivity. For this one though, it does come down to personal preference. You can try them out, and all it's basically going to do is decide the speed in which you're not ADSing, but you're just regular movement speed. For myself, I prefer having it on a 2 with lower sensitivity, because that way when I ADS, my sensitivity is slower and it helps me with the longer engaged gunfights. But for certain people, if you're going to go with it on 0 and then you decide to have your sensitivity, it will feel that little bit quicker with the 1-to-1 on the ADSing. But comment down below as well which one you've been using and prefer. My personal opinion, it has to be on a 2 with a much lower sensitivity. And for tip number 4, it is to learn the recoil patterns. They are going to be individual to each gun depending on also your attachments and the FOV that you're using. This is something you can easily practice, but setting your loadout and going into the practice mode are the best ways to test it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start by aiming in and shooting my gun without trying to compensate for it at all. As you can see there, it does go up and to the right. So what you're going to do is you're just going to try correct it little by little. And as you can see from my gameplay, it is just something small you have to try out. So when you figure out which way your gun is naturally pulling, you can then start to compensate for this and pull in the opposite direction. What I would recommend is just sitting here for a moment and just practicing it. Once your shots are consistently in the smaller circle, then you can go and start practicing on the targets at a range. There's no point really doing it from up close, as between probably 10 to 15 meters is only when the recoil starts. So from here there's barely any recoil, from here there's slightly less, and from here it's manageable. If you need to practice it, I would recommend going to the 20 meter, and that's where I'd start testing it. So what you should do is you just come in and just practice, even tapping it a little bit. You'll see that's kicking up to the right still. And eventually, once you get used to this, you can start holding it down more and more, and you'll know the compensation for it. You'll be able to keep it tracked on exactly where you need it to be. Pairing this up then with moving slightly left and right will keep the aim assist on it. So if I'm aiming here, I'm just moving ever so slightly left and right. And what this will do is it will just help you maintain the recoil on the gun. So you can see here, just as I keep practicing it, obviously there will be chances where you won't get it, but just with consistency, you'll be able to keep the recoil manageable. And for tip number 5 is going to be for centering. XDefiant relies a lot on movement and reaction speed. If you're not always prepared for a gunfight, you're going to lose 9 out of 10 times. A great way to improve this and win more gunfights is consistently be improving your centering. A lot of players will be aiming either too high or too low. You need to try and keep your crosshair at the chest to head heights at all times. This is something you will need to actively be doing until you can build up the muscle memory to do this without thinking. The reason this is important is for a lot of players are aiming too low. What that means, if I run into an enemy here and I'm looking at their feet, I need to compensate and pull up just to make sure I'm hitting the chest. So if I turn this corner and I see an enemy, we'll say this enemy here, say we run around an enemy, see, oh enemy, you have to look and then aim up. If that enemy comes around the corner and I'm centering, all I have to do is straight away be ready. On top of that, like, so if you're spraying around the corner, as long as your centering is somewhere in like the upper chest to head height, you'll also get a lot more kills doing this way. If I turn this corner and I'm looking here, if this enemy is doing the same, it's a 50-50 chance or even lower that we're going to win the gunfight. But if I come around this corner looking at this direction, I say there's no one here, and I turn around here, oh, there's someone there, instantly I'm hitting them in the chest, which gives me a higher chance of killing them. What you'll also know is if you're coming around the corner and you're aiming too low, you're not really snapping onto them. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you're coming around the corner at a chest height, just so that way you're snapping onto the mid chest or upper. So what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that you're always centering around the middle of your screen. This is going to help you to snap onto the enemies without having to drag up every time to get the kill. Once you get used to centering and you got a lot better of it, you'll be able to do stuff like jumping around corners and knowing what height to be looking at. So if I'm jumping around this corner, I know exactly where I have to be aiming to get headshots, to hit them in the body, or just to keep my aim on the opponent. On top of that as well, because of how the aim assist works, as you're strafing through the air, it's also going to pull your aim assist towards the enemy. The best way to learn how to do this is just imagine at all times that you're trying to look at someone exactly head height to yourself. I know sometimes myself, I aim probably here on most cases, so just below centering. It is something I'm actively working on, but if you want to become a top player, it's definitely something you got to improve on as well. And for tip number 6, that is going to be to warm up. You don't need to be warmed up for an hour before jumping into a game. 5 to 10 minutes before playing your first game is fine. All you're looking to do is to warm up your fingers and bring back the muscle memory. So what I like to do when I'm just warming up is very simple. I'll start by just coming over here and just tapping them slowly, one at a time, headshots, and just practicing like this for a moment. What this will do is it will help you just warm up that little bit, get used to the sensitivity you're running and your settings. Especially if you've been taking it maybe a day or a couple of hours off playing, you'll need to do this to warm up. So what I'll do is I'll start by warming up with the closer enemies, and then what I'll do is I'll work going the way back. Once you've done this a couple of times and you're doing it more consistently, then it's time to practice just fully autoing the gun. With this, obviously you're going to be missing a lot more shots, but with this you're just trying to snap on the enemy. So I might aim over here, then I might aim over to the libertads and then up at the back. You'll do this for 5 or 10 minutes. Sometimes I like to do it with the echelon and just practice two tapping the enemies. What you can do is you can just practice this over and over for 5 to 10 minutes until you feel warmed up. For certain people, they train in different ways, but if you're on controller, this is definitely the way that I would do it. Obviously on PC, you have aim trainers and other ways you can do it, but for console, this is how I'm doing it. Is I'm just coming in here and I'm just practicing for maybe 5-10 minutes. I'm not too worried about the accuracy overall. It's more about just getting warmed up, and as you do this for longer and longer, it will get more and more accurate. Like for myself, this is my first maybe 10 minutes I've been on the game. I've yet to even go into a single game. What I'm doing here is I'm just warming up. I'm just getting ready for when I do have to go into a game. Just you don't want to be going into a game cold. The worst feeling in the world is when you come on after not playing for a little while, you're dying to play the game and you have a bad game because you weren't ready to play it. It can sometimes get you annoyed, tilted, and not want to play other games. So what I say is just come in here, just warm up, practice here, and then what you can do is you can also come in over here. Once your fingers are warmed up, you can practice your recoil control, your strafing, everything else like that, and just keep an eye on it, because it's definitely going to be important. A lot of people just jump straight into their first or second game. They're not warmed up, they get agitated, and then they get annoyed at the game. They like to blame it on stuff like hit registration and other things. So that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you found these tips helpful, please consider subscribing and liking this video. Also, why not check out our Discord, which is linked down below. So this was a different kind of video. Let me know down below if you like these kind of videos where I'm just kind of live comment as I'm going through it. They're slightly less scripted and I'm just letting you know what's going through my brain at the time. Hopefully these tips did help you. Check out our most recent video, which is up on screen right now. We were trying to hit 6,000 subs before Monday and we've absolutely smashed it. So thank you to everyone who has been subscribing. That's all for today's video, and I'll see you all in the next video.